Change of any kind plays tricks on our minds. We need to expect this. Irrational thoughts are going to come, and only time and experience will eventually iron them out once you move through it. But that's what it took for me, time and patience and sheer faith that things would get better. Welcome to the Go Go Bistro podcast, where we dish up inspiration for women who are hungry for change and ready to make it happen. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. This is a space to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing is off the table. I'll be serving up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and share my interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they've learned along the way. So join me at my favorite little two-top, pull up a chair, and let's get started. I talk a lot about a whisper or a voice or whatever it becomes for you that can move you toward making a change you feel deep down needs to happen in your life. I thought if I shared my story, it might help illustrate how this little whisper showed up in my life and eventually caused me to make a life-changing decision to get sober. Now, once again, this is not a podcast about sobriety. This is just my experience with change on a large scale because of the shifts it made and continues to make in how I live my life. Now, I also want to share how resistance can be very common when deciding to make a change and how it can surprisingly show up after the change has happened. So I will also share my experience with the many years of resistance that actually followed and how I finally came to terms with this denial. I think that is what can trip us up the most, facing the fear of change while staying willing to own it before, during, and after, leaving us open to what it is meant to teach us every step of the way. Now, my first bottle of wine in my studio apartment in San Francisco was in the late 90s. Everyone is outside and running and walking their dogs on a sunny afternoon in Pacific Heights, and I'm inside popping a cork, getting ready to shut out the world. Now, it is so crazy that I can vividly remember pausing and noticing it was the first time I was drinking alone. It was like some threshold I was crossing over. I remember taking that in and consciously recognizing it. Maybe because I come from a family of drinkers that this moment was not lost on me. It's actually the first time I heard a faint little whisper say, "What are you doing?" I spent the following years climbing the corporate ladder in several startups in very stressful work environments, working crazy hours and unwinding with a glass of wine, or 5, at the end of the day, and that just became my reality. I went into an existence of getting through the day and drawing the shades at night. And I kept my drinking really well hidden, never calling anyone after 7 p.m., so no one could witness me coming undone in any way. This just kept going for, I would say, 7 years before I never missed a day of work or a night of drinking. And this whisper kept coming back. But now it was saying, this has got to stop. It got louder and louder. It would come when I was out with friends. It would come as I was looking in the mirror the morning after. I would hear it in the evening after swearing I was going to stop walking to Whole Foods to pick up more. It kept saying, this has got to stop. So finally on November 2011, and I can remember vividly being in my best friend's living room after Thanksgiving dinner and thinking about the half-full glasses that had been left on the table. I was seriously thinking about going back in to drink them. I was disgusted with myself and so full of shame because it had gotten so out of hand. And the sad thing was, nobody knew. So the next morning, I was sitting on my bed, feeling horribly hungover, and it was like a surrender. I finally decided to stop the madness. It was like a door shut, and I refused to look back. I finally decided to listen to that little voice inside and take action. And then once I quit, it became an immediate PR situation. I kept thinking, life as I know it will stop. I told my sister, which of course made it real because she had been sober for many years. So once she knew, I knew I couldn't go back. It sounds so irrational to say now, but I just kept thinking, what is going to happen to me? I will have no friends. I will have no social life. What am I going to do? Now, to give you an idea of the drama, I was a total mess when my sister's ID was taken away from me at a bar in college. Like the drinking life was my only ticket to, well, pretty much anything. See, change of any kind plays tricks on our minds. We need to expect this. Irrational thoughts are going to come, and only time and experience will eventually iron them out once you move through it. But that's what it took for me, time and patience and sheer faith that things would get better. In addition to these thoughts of dread and doubt, as a few years passed in sobriety, I had to come to terms with the fact that I was actually in big, fat, ugly denial. Yep, this was actually after getting sober. So I was no longer drinking, but I was still hiding out. I was still struggling with talking about it, especially with work colleagues, and the work parties and social events were the worst because I had to come to terms with my own reality and step into it and own my decision. Forget that I was saving my life and sanity. I just kept thinking, this is my reputation for crying out loud. All, of course, was totally in my head. I hated that I had to face the fear of an awkward silence or an eye roll if I decided not to participate in a happy hour or work party. I avoided it at all costs and made stuff up just to get around it. It's like I was going through the motions but not accepting it at all. Sure, I would tell people I don't drink, but I would quickly follow it up with something lame like, I only drank wine, as if that somehow made it so much better. I think I had this fear of them immediately thinking they were talking to some addict who couldn't get herself home in one piece after a party. And well, I drank at home alone, so I didn't have that problem. It was like I felt my credibility was far too valuable as a professional to let them think less of me. As if I was on some pedestal and couldn't be knocked off. All total ego thinking, but what did I know? I actually didn't realize how much I was resisting the decision to fully own it until well into my sobriety. It's like trying to hang on to the one thing I thought kept me just like everyone else. Not having any issues, sticking out, or being visible in any way. If I'm the sober girl, what does that say about me? I came to realize once I fully stepped into it, it actually said a lot. It said I had the strength of my own conviction to finally forego the need to fit in, to save my own life. It's that simple. I know it sounds dramatic, but it was the truth. My health was in bad shape, and it was my first real step into putting my well-being first, above everything else, and that was huge for me. I continue to learn in sobriety and laugh whenever I think I have something down pat because I know in my heart there's always more to be revealed. Accountability is a big deal when we make changes in our lives. We simply don't have the luxury of making a decision and walking away from the results. I guess that's what being an adult is all about. The reality is, if we are willing to go for it to become better versions of ourselves, it's going to take a bit of discomfort. Because all good things take time, energy, and a little bit of pain, but are always well worth it. That's why it's so critical to commit to the result ahead of time, even if you don't know what it's going to look like. Regardless of the outcome, you need to be open to have those difficult conversations, accept possible rejection, face the fallout or potential judgment from others, and you also get to own the good stuff. The pride that comes with putting yourself first, of making the choice that felt so scary, but actually turned out okay in the end. And the self-satisfaction of going after what you know in your heart you deserve. Because at the end of the day, that's where the courage comes in. That's what it means to truly take ownership of your life. Now, this isn't meant to scare you away from taking a leap. It's actually meant to help you understand the importance of stepping into something meaningful with your eyes wide open, willing to accept all the lessons as well as the amazing outcomes it can create. So for now, I want you to think about any change you want to make in your life, big or small, and just play it out a bit in your head. What will it look like? How will you feel about it? And what are you willing to do to make it happen? Just a few things to think about. Well, I hope my story was helpful and maybe inspires or encourages you to think about change in a different light. With that said, that's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.